Hello, class, and welcome to Psychology 2010, developmental psychology across a lifespan. Today, I'd like to share with you a little bit about the nature of developmental psychology, as well as what we'll be looking at in this course a little bit. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to be looking at, why we're going to be looking at. My name is Dr. Soggie, and I will be your instructor for this course. So overall, developmental psychology is one of the subfields of the field of psychology. It is the study of the human organism from conception all the way through to death, and how the mind is engaged with all of that. Within developmental psychology, we're really seeking at understanding and managing, controlling the basic processes and dynamics underlying human behavior as it relates to the various stages of life. So we're really interested in investigating what encompasses the growth and maturation of the individual in the physical sense, as well as in the mental, cognitive, and emotional sense, as well as how our personality structure is formed through the lifespan. Overall, developmental psychology is a science of growth. It deals with all the processes contributing to becoming an infant, to becoming a child, to becoming an adolescent, and to becoming, ideally, a mature adult. Now, developmental psychology, we remember, is a branch of psychology, and so we're interested in the study of how individuals engage with each other and how that engagement forms the functioning within the individual themselves, and how things are related to age, how behaviors can provide predictions for what might be happening in the future, and so on. And some developmental psychologists will study developmental changes that cover the lifespan from conception through to death. Others will focus on one small part, aging or childhood. Whatever you are interested in within developmental psychology, there are four aspects of development that are very closely intertwined, that really kind of keep coming up within the field, and that we'll be mindful of as we explore things within this course. The first one is the physical development. Within physical development, we're interested in what constitutes changes in the body, in the brain, in our sensory capacity, and our motor skills. What are the major influences of all of these things upon our intellect and our personality? For example, if something happens to impede physical development in infancy, how can it cause problems or helps down the road? Then there is intellectual development. Here we're interested in what are the changes in mental abilities, such as learning, memory, reasoning, thinking, and language. A 2-year-old obviously does not think like a newborn. A 2-year-old does not think like a 4-year-old. A 4-year-old does not think like a 12-year-old. A 12-year-old does not think like a 21-year-old. And a 21-year-old does not think like a 65-year-old. So we need to be kind of mindful of what are these changes in memory, in intellectual ability, in processing power, in the ways that knowledge is engaged and manipulated within experience. Then, of course, there is memory. How do memories form the foundation of who we are? How does it form who we are in our personality, in our social engagement? All of these things can be very profound. And then, of course, there is the social development of a person. Personality and social development are things that are going to affect cognitive aspects of life, physical aspects of life, and if we develop an impediment in some form in our personal or social development, that can have a profound impact in later stages in life. So we need to be mindful of all of those as we go through this process. All of this is very important. The thing to kind of keep in mind is that within developmental psychology, there are some simple principles. The first one being that development is similar for all. All children, for the most part, go through similar stages of development. And research has shown that, and so we can kind of look at that. What is normal development? What may be abnormal development in those cases? Development can, though, proceed at different rates. Different people absorb information or change or develop at slightly different rates. And there can be a variety of factors for this. These can be genetic factors, these can be environmental or psychosocial factors. But development still happens. The other thing is that development is continuous. We are continually changing as living, breathing beings from the moment of conception to the moment of our death. We are changing, adapting, and growing or declining. And all of this needs to be recognized as we engage people and understand even ourselves. Development proceeds also from general to specific responses. Our bodies are wired to respond in specific ways to specific types of stimuli. But there can be some specific times where personal choice plays into that, and that can be something that we need to be mindful of as well. All of this to say that within the process of developmental psychology, there is a lot that is going on. Now, I want to just kind of highlight some of the basic parts of lifespan development and the kinds of things that we'll be looking at within this course. So let's start off with our prenatal period. Within this really ranges from birth to conception, so conception to birth. And during this stage, there are some very important developments that take place that oftentimes we don't even think about. Basic things like basic body structure, basic development of our brains, of our organs forming correctly. All of this takes place during this prenatal period. Physical growth here is extremely rapid. To go from a microscopic being to something that you can hold in your hand in a matter of months is phenomenal. And we need to kind of recognize the complexities of that and explore that a little bit. But the other thing with prenatal phase that you will see is that there's an extreme vulnerability to environmental influences at this time. And so it's important to recognize that this prenatal phase is a very critical phase for the development of the person, and that there can be some profound changes based upon what one would think are minor environmental influences, but can play a huge role in impacting the development of a child. Then we have infancy and toddlerhood. And within this phase, we have the importance of, this is obviously just after birth. For the first few years of life, we have the extreme dependence of the newborn, the engagement of all the senses that are operating at birth. We have, again, physical growth and motor skill development that is profoundly rapid. The ability to learn and remember is present. And so these early years, while we may not be able to access the memories in our adult life, still have profound influence upon the kind of person we end up becoming. And this is kind of building our personality here in many ways. And so the engagement and attachment that we have to our caregiver, our parents normally, is extremely crucial these first few years. And it's only after the first year or so that we develop our sense of self-awareness that really kind of comes on, and we develop comprehension and speech and interest in others begins to increase. Then we come to early childhood, so that age roughly from ages 3 through to 6. And here we have where family is the focus of life, and engagement within the family is ideally a place of safety. There is a development of gross motor skills that begins to improve, and the child begins to learn basic rudimentary skills of self-care, of independence, of self-control, learning how to play, learning how to be creative, engaging. There is some cognitive development, and but a lot of illogical ideas, simply because of still a lack of information about the world that is going on. But the child is learning very quickly how to absorb what is being presented to them so that they can understand the world a little bit more. Then we come to middle childhood, so ages 5 through to 12, and here we see that peers become much more important. Friendships are more central. The egocentrism begins to adjust a little bit. The children begin to think a little more logically, but largely concretely. Memory and language skills increase significantly, and there's significant physical growth that takes place, as well as a discovery of physical strength and athletic skills begin to develop at this phase. Then we have adolescence. So adolescence normally between the ages of 12 to around 20, and to some extent, depending upon life circumstances, up to 25 years old. Generally, what I consider is that 20 to 25-year-old phase is very dependent upon the individual, but we do tend to see some shifting that begins to take place between 20 and 25 into young adulthood. At this adolescent stage, there's some significant physical changes that are rapid and profound and very much hormone-based. Reproductive maturity begins to take place, as well as a search for meaning and for identity as a person develops the skill to be able to think abstractly. And so peer groups become profoundly important here, and the relationship with parents begins to adjust as the adolescent finds their ability to think abstractly. Then we come to young adulthood. In young adulthood, we can say from, 20 to 40 or 25 to 40. And here we follow where there are some significant tasks that need to take place. Intimacy versus isolation. Decisions made about what one will do with life, and about intimate relationships, about their physical health, and the impending decline of physical health, as well as how they're going to engage the world. What are the career choices that someone is going to make? What sense of identity do they have? How are they going to find meaning within their life? And what kind of intellectual abilities do they have and that they can develop? What new complexities are they able to grasp and hold on to? Then we have middle age. Middle age is that period between the ages of 40 through to 65, roughly, where there is a search for meaning and an importance for finding a legacy within life. There is also deterioration of physical health, of stamina, of prowess. There can be transitions to infertility, so for women experiencing menopause. It's here where your wisdom and practical problem-solving skills are high, but your ability to solve novel problems becomes lower. And so the creativity begins to drop off oftentimes during this phase. So it's really, the time orientation also shifts from what am I going to do with life, or not being concerned about the future, to, oh, now I only have so much time left. And then when children are gone, the empty nester time period, and oftentimes there can also be experiences like burnout, midlife crisis, those types of things. Then we come to late adulthood, and this is the period ranging from ages 65 and following, and on into retirement. So there's the questions of retirement. Do I have enough savings for retirement? Am I able to still be hearty and active physically and mentally, and dealing with the inevitable declines of health and physical and mental abilities? Alertness becomes lower. Slow reaction times begin to set in. There tends to be a need to develop skills for coping with loss, because there's a lot of inevitable loss that will take place during this time. The people that you know, that you are familiar with, begin to die. And so there oftentimes can be a need to find purpose in life, and particularly dealing with the questions of your impending death. And that brings us to, of course, death and dying, and dealing with that as a phase of life. What does it mean to die? What is a good death? What is a ideal way of approaching death, of memorializing those that have died, and so on. And so all of that is what we'll be taking a look at within this course. So I hope you enjoy this course. This course will explore all the different ways of gaining this knowledge. So of course we have our non-experimental methods of case studies, naturalistic observations. We also will explore researchers that look at more longitudinal studies, sequential studies, as well as phenomenological research, and recognizing in all of these things that there is the challenge of finding, first off, representative samples, establishing rapport with subjects, dealing with the methodological obstacles that take place in research and developmental psychology, as well as the ethical aspects of research. So all of this is part of what we really kind of need to be mindful of as we go through this process. So that's it for our introductory lifespan lecture for this week, and we'll continue on with our discussions for this week, as well as supplementary videos, and I will see you next week. You take care. Bye-bye.